And of course, there's
So,
security risk as well. You could, in theory, hack somebody's chip, therefore
yeah.
accessing a lot of information.
Yeah, imagine, right? This concept of brain jacking, being somebody be able to getting through the loopholes, getting through the code on your brain and be able to control what you do and what you say. Imagine us right now. If somebody wanted to control what I was saying and I was embedded with that, they could do it. And suddenly I'm saying some really wrong stuff on an interview with David Lynn. To me, this would be bad. So,
Right.
but there are great use cases for this.
We're living in an age where sci-fi is becoming reality. What happens when we implant neural chips into our brain that can control things remotely or perhaps even download or upload information to the internet? What happens when AI becomes so ingrained with our reality we can't distinguish between deep fake and what's real? How do we protect ourselves from this? We'll be discussing these themes with our next guest, Phillip Shoemaker, Executive Director and CEO of Identity.com, and he's working on issues that solve the crisis regarding AI and deep fake. But first, a word from our sponsor, I Trust Capital, an IRA that offers 35 crypto assets and the lowest trading fees in the crypto IRA space at 1%, as well as unique tax benefits. So if you like to roll over an existing account or open a new account with cash, as long as you're 18 and over, you can do it. Take advantage of the recent Bitcoin increase in price and consider an IRA like I Trust Capital. Link in the description down below, I Trust Capital/David, and click on that to learn more. Phillip, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, David. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to talk about Neuralink first and also new developments in AI. So Elon Musk's Neuralink is making waves in the news. I'll just read you this paragraph from CNN that came out this morning on Tuesday. First Neuralink human trial subject can control a computer mouse with brain implant, Elon Musk says. He says the Neuralink's first human trial participant can control a computer mouse with a brain nearly 1 month after having the company's chip implanted. Details remain sparse, and other companies working on brain computer interfaces appear to have so far cleared more technological hurdles than Neuralink. I think that's I think what it's trying to say is it's not, a new idea, but I guess he's doing it on a different scale. According to Musk, progress is good. Patient seems to have made a full recovery and is able to control the mouse, move the mouse around the screen just by thinking. He said on a conversation on X Spaces. Uh, Philip, what's your first impression upon hearing the news that Neuralink is going ahead with human trials?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of good positive implications here for the technology world by embedding this in the brain. Some of it has to do with getting disabled people to be able to walk, et cetera, use limbs and that kind of thing. But it also helps us augment ourselves for people that are losing brain capacity, losing memory capacity, et cetera. So for me, I was really fired up when I heard the news because I think this is the direction that the world is going and that humanity is going. And this is stuff that we need to be able to help us advance in the future.
But it's not entirely a new concept, is it? I mean, people have tried to control either prosthetic limbs or objects with just their thoughts before.
That's right. And there have been devices that you strap on the top of your head that read brain waves and brain patterns to be able to do similar things. I had one that you could use to control the mouse on the screen. It was very rudimentary. It wasn't as direct as you'd like, and it had a lot of transmission errors, right? Issues. You'd see glitches. The hope is that by embedding this chip into the motor portion of the cortex, you're able to control it much more directly and more quickly. So I think that's the exciting thing, is that getting it directly embedded. So to me, I'm fired up on this tech.
Is this the start of a new, I guess, transhumanist wave where we start replacing body parts with machines and augment our physical and perhaps even mental abilities?
Yeah, it really is. We've seen this in the last few years, obviously in the Olympics and with runners and stuff having different types of prosthetic limbs, and wondering if they should be able to compete in the Olympics with the non-disabled Olympics because their prosthetic limbs actually worked better than humans. So transhumanism is here. We're going to see it just continue to change and morph, et cetera. And people that are augmented with this tech might have to compete in different types of Olympics or a different type of Jeopardy and things like those kind of games, right?
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the use cases of something like Neuralink. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is students of the future will just be able to cheat on exams. I don't even know how they would be able to
Right?
to invigilate exams if everybody has a chip in their brain that they can theoretically hook up to the internet. But I'll let you comment on some practical use cases that we can benefit from.
Well, I think, I think you're thinking exactly along the same lines as I am. Remember all this last year, all the controversy about the grandmasters playing chess together and whether
Hmm.
one was cheating with all the theories about how that one guy was cheating. It makes you wonder in the future if somebody has a Neuralink, how will you know or how won't you know, right? If you go to New York City and you want to play chess against some of those masters outside, how are you going to know who's augmented and who's not? It's not going to be easy. And so this is the scary part about the future is that you're not going to know if you're comparing apples to apples until you start doing brain scans for people that come into the room, and that just seems ludicrous.
And of course, there's
So
security risk as well. You could, in theory, hack somebody's chip, therefore
yeah.
accessing a lot of information.
Yeah, imagine, right? This concept of brain jacking, being somebody be able to getting through the loopholes, getting through the code on your brain and be able to control what you do and what you say. Imagine us right now. If somebody wanted to control what I was saying and I was embedded with that, they could do it. And suddenly I'm saying some really wrong stuff on an interview with David Lynn. To me, this would be bad. So,
Right.
but there are great use cases for this, right? I mean,
Right.
look, one of the most interesting things, and you're right about students, is that I think there ultimately needs to be an age range for this type of augmentation. When people are in school, you want them to be able to form that ability to do critical thinking rather than letting a chat GPT or something like that that's running on the Neuralink be able to do all the critical thinking for you. This is something that's important for us as humans. That's what separates us from the animals is this ability to critical think. And so those type of solutions are going to be coming for this. But I think to help augment people that need it, or ultimately to augment you to so you perform at a higher standard. But to me, right now, I think we need to have some sort of age range in there and disallow this from brains while they're forming to to be augmented in this way. But the use cases are staggering, right? Obviously, controlling limbs. Instead of a human computer interface, there's going to be a BCI, brain computer interface, where you can just sit there and think what you want the computer to do, think about the code you want to write, think about what application you want to launch, and it's just going to launch. And it's going to make things so much faster and streamline us in a way that these outside things, outside forces are going to largely be ignored because we're in there and we're directly accessing the computer. It's also going to separate us a lot and make us more isolated in our worlds. But to me, just this direct BCI is going to be phenomenal.
Let's take this one step further. What happens if we integrate something like Neuralink with advanced AI?
Yeah, it's going to remove all. Look, I think that one of the first things that we're going to see is that everybody's going to just think about simple things like when you go into a movie theater
Mm.
and you walk through it, do you go up to the left or do you go up the right? Right. Majority of people go up to the right or go up to the left. It's just a natural thing, but a smaller percentage go to the right. Think about a simple thing that your brain does that tells you which direction you should go when you enter a building. Is it to the left or to the right? This is all going to be automated. If we're all using the same critical thinking engine, we're all going to go the same direction. We're all going to be in sync, which is going to be good and bad, right? The status quo will be 99% of the people doing the same thing over and over and over again because that's what's expected. That's what this advanced AI is telling us to do. And that's going to permeate through every aspect of our lives. And I think
If we
that is one
were
of the scary parts.
if you can imagine a scenario in which you could integrate something like ChatGPT directly into your brain chip, what would that look like?
Well, for me, I think one of the things Neuralink's going to ultimately do, and I'm not just saying this because I used to run the App Store, but they're going to have an App Store, right, for Neuralink, and you're going to be able to choose what apps you want to be running on this thing, and be able
Mm.
to use different engines, different AI engines, et cetera. But for me, an interface like that is really reminiscent. If you look at what some of these AI pins are doing, right? These pins you can do, or the glasses. If you look at a company called Brilliant Labs that has this frame that allows you to ask ChatGPT, what is this object I'm looking at? Can I buy it online, et cetera? This is going to be one of the first things that we see is that there's going to be if you embed this in the proper place, you're going to be able to have optical, you're going to have auditory faculties all inside. You're not going to be able to see anything on the outside. People aren't going to know that ChatGPT or one of these advanced AIs is talking to you. And you'll be able to carry on full conversations without uttering the words yourself, just thinking them. This is going to be the interaction of the future, right? This is the brain computer interaction, is that ultimately it might be communicating to your device that you're carrying with you. But for the most part, this interaction is going to be completely silent. And we're going to have a lot of long pauses in conversations with people because
Mhm.
something's telling them what to say or telling them, or thinking through the question that you asked. But they're going to have a dialogue back and forth in their head with an AI. That's the future, right?
Uh, are there any ethical concerns that immediately pop into your mind?
No, there are so many concerns across the board. Look, I think that, like I said earlier, that one of the first things I worry about is the age at which people start incorporating this. There's,
Mm.
the brain continues to mold until you're roughly 25, and then with neuroplasticity and other effects like that, you continue to generate new brain, lay new brain wires, if you will, neurons, et cetera, to learn new things. So the first one is when you can put this thing into your brain. I think some of the other ones are, is this the right thing to do for humanity? I think it's going to be easy. It's a slippery slope going down this direction where we start putting this in and all of our abilities to critically think just disappear because we're not taxing our brain anymore. Who knows, right? This whole concept of use it or lose it, what will happen to our brain matter if we start using less and less and less of it? Because what's going to happen with technology ultimately is it's going to fail on us, right? Suddenly my BCI is not communicating to my phone. How do I go get a new appointment? If I've lost all my ability to do simple things like calling up my doctor to get a new appointment, to replace the chip that's in my head, people are gonna just forget what to do. Right now, we have the same issue with technology in general, but it's just gonna get worse if we rely on this so much.
I'm not a neuroscientist, so excuse me if my questions seem rudimentary, but if I were to, let's say, download some information using a Neuralink chip, and then that information becomes part of my memory, okay, and then I have to remove the chip for whatever reason, do I still retain those pieces of information, or is that
I
going to be
think for the
stored in a chip?
most part, the way our brain is trained, I don't think that's going to be happening, right? I think for the most part, the memory will be on chip memory that you can access, that you can
Mm,
store, et cetera, because the chemicals that need to get released in order for your brain to lay new memory pathways is going to be difficult to do with something like
right.
this. Now, there is a possibility of that happening. I just don't think that's going to be the main direction. It's going to be storing it on that chip, and once you remove that chip, you lose all access. But honestly, it's probably not going to be memory at all because these communications are going to be fast enough that you can constantly consult the internet, right? For every answer, there will be a database out there somewhere that you can consult to get an answer. And so, who needs to memorize things when it's always
Exactly.
instantly accessible,
Why go to medical school and memorize books of
right?
procedures and and concepts when you can just access it? I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of a lot of our traditional institutions if you think about it going forward. This is going to be revolutionary in a good and bad way.
That's right. I agree, and it makes you wonder. I mean, will Harvard allow in students that have chips in their head because they're not really learning, right? It's rote memorization. It's not even memorization. It's just replaying something that an AI is telling me.
Um, yeah, it does come back to the question of why. I mean, I could do the exact same thing with my phone, except this would be faster.
That's right.
except it would be a little more convenient. Philip, it also raises the question of whether or not it would divide society. You have the haves who would be able to
Yeah.
afford this and be able to augment their physical and perhaps even mental cognitive abilities, and then you have the have-nots who just have to put up with being human, if that's
Yeah.
even a bad thing going forward.
Yeah, this technology is not going to be cheap, right? And so we're gonna have multiple camps here. We're gonna have the people that want it, the tech forward people that can afford it, that want it, and they're probably gonna have to pay a monthly fee to use it, et cetera, right? They're the ones that are going to try to advance society, and that's going to be the haves. And then there's different camps of have-nots, the ones that can't afford it, and the ones that are just ethically predisposed to hate this thing, right? And so we're going to have those various camps that do that. And I think the biggest ones are the biggest issues are the ones between the people that want it but can't afford it and the people that want it and can't afford it. And that separation is going to significantly divide society. I think this is a very exclusionary technology. Not everyone's going to be getting it, but those that get it will probably just continue to be able to advance themselves, advance their direction, advance their career, and advance their ability to make money, which will further that gap, right? And I think that's one of the most frightening things about this.
Okay. Let's move on to another aspect of tech, which is the development of AI and its practical uses that may or may not be harmful to society. So certainly your company is working on a few security measures, I believe, to alleviate some of the concerns that people have around AI. Tell us more about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, at identity.com, we focus on a decentralized identity approach. And what people often think about this is that we're running around wanting everybody and every interaction on the internet to be identified, right? As person A and person B, that we know their driver's license number, we know everything about them. And that's not the case, what we want to do. We want to ensure that trusted transactions are carried out between trusted individuals, two trusted individuals. So for example, if I want to send money from one person to another, or if somebody is asking me on behalf of their company or behalf of my company to send money to another company, I just need to ensure that person is who they say they are. Now, what's happening, we're seeing in the world is deep fake technologies, which we've seen happen over the course of the last few years,
Mhm.
have tricked people into sending a large amounts of money from their company to another random address because they got a message from the CEO or they sat down in a Zoom call with the CEO who told them to do this or the CFO. And we've seen this time and time again. And one of these problems is that these AIs and these deep fake type of technologies are so compelling and they look so real that you can't differentiate one from another, reality from this fake reality. And so what we believe is that moving forward, that every type of interaction you have, everything from images that you ingest, pictures that you take, all of that is something that needs to be signed, right? It needs to be signed cryptographically that says, this is a message from Phillip Shoemaker. Phillip Shoemaker swears that this content is real, et cetera, right? And that's something that identity.com's been working on with companies like Adobe. They have this thing called the Content Authenticity Initiative that allows you to embed watermarks in images, in videos, in audio to ensure that there is a verifiable credential, a credential that says this is from Phillip Shoemaker. And I think this is just the first step. We see these. I don't know if you saw what happened at Issaquah High School last week about these students that posted pictures that they just took from Instagram from fellow students and then sent through the Notify app and then posted them everywhere as though that person is posting nude pictures of themselves. Now, in some cases, these were 14-year-olds. But age is important here, but also the Taylor Swift photos from a few weeks earlier, et cetera. There's a lot of these things that you have to ask yourself, what is the value for these type of services out there? Fine. You want to run a Notify server on your and do this for your own personal enjoyment. Look, there might be ethical implications there. But as soon as you want to start posting things, you have to understand that this content is unsigned. There's nobody putting their name behind it. And therefore, you shouldn't believe that tech. And that's the kind of thing we're building. We're building a technology and a world where the only content you should ingest and should trust is content that is signed by the author. right? Something like
How do you sign it?
if yeah, so Adobe is working with companies like New York Times and others, but also with camera manufacturers that you embed your identity, as much of your identity as you want, into the camera. And with each photo you take, it just embeds a watermark into that photo. So when you send it around, one, there's provenance. You know who took this photo, right? That can handle royalty and other things there. But most importantly, that it's not created by an AI. And so this is a watermark that's just kind of hidden. If you want to know who accessed it, you can drop it into a reader that ultimately says, "Oh yeah, this is was created by Phillip Shoemaker. That he is who he says he is. Here's his decentralized identifier called a DID that you can dig in and be able to get more information about him." And so things like this are ultimately going to prove the provenance of content, and that includes AI created content. I would love if Midjourney and Dolly and these other and Sora and these other content creators will ultimately embed a verifiable credential in their output that says this was created by an AI. So we know that this is signed content, but it was created by an AI versus this is signed content and it was created by David Lin.
Suppose I create a fake interview with Phillip Shoemaker, okay, using deepfake.
Yeah,
It's obvious he's not signed by you nor myself. But how would people be able to distinguish whether or not that's real? What are the tools or perhaps indicators you could use to know whether or not this is an authentic interview if it is not signed? Because presumably this process would take some time for all digital content to have some
that's
sort
right.
of signature, right?
Yeah, right now, the way it works is that pretty much no content is signed. And if you want to sign content, you can do so using Adobe's tools, ultimately by using identity.com's app, et cetera. We are working on an app to handle this as well. But that allows you to sign the content and ultimately read it. So I see a future where viewers, Macs, iPhones, et cetera, will ultimately have a provenance tab or an identity tab that you just can tap on to be able to see who is behind this content. That is the way I see it working in the future. Is that all readers, Zooms, etc. We know where this is. Like for example, right now I'm talking to you, and I see it as coming from your computer, from your camera.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what's in between between the camera? Is it going through something that is putting an avatar in your
Mm-hmm.
place, that's
Mm-hmm.
replacing your face, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
We ultimately need to be able to see the provenance of that camera to ensure that this data feed is not being tampered with. And that's how deep this technology ultimately has to go. Is we want everything to be signed by the hardware, ideally.
Technology is going to become so advanced, we're going to have to resort back to the old times when we have to sit face to face to ensure that we're actually people and do this interview face to face. Uh, we're,
Exactly.
we're advancing so far that we have to go backwards. Phillip, so not everything is signed right now. And you're working on digital signatures going forward, but AI could it not replicate a digital signature and fraudulently, I guess, forge a signature?
Yeah. So with these cryptographic methods, we could ensure that the technology can't be signed by anyone other than me. Now, what that means is that I have a private key somewhere that allows me to cryptographically sign an image, sign the data, and then there's a registry somewhere that you could see
Mm.
what my signature is and see if that's the real Phillip Shoemaker. Sure, an AI could create another Phillip Shoemaker that looks similar to me, et cetera, but it won't have that signature, it won't be part of the registry,
Right.
and people will be able to differentiate the two. But you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the big problems that we have with this right now is that what is identity, right? Is identity for most of us is a government issued ID. And if we can see that AIs are now forging documents like this so readily, that it's going to make this even difficult. So what do we need here, right? Do we need one company or one government to stand up and say, okay, we're issuing decentralized identifiers right away. As soon as you're born, et cetera, you're going to get a decentralized identifier, which you'll carry with you for life. It just gets more and more complex, right? To solve this problem, And it's interesting to be involved in this because we're always looking forward. We're always trying to get ahead of what the scammers and the AIs are going to ultimately try to replace.
Interesting. Where can we learn more about identity.com and your work?
Yeah, identity.com. We founded this company to be able to solve some of the problems that people have. There's millions of people in the world that don't have real identities. Their country has gone through war, et cetera. So they don't have an identity, which many of us take for granted. And we wanted to ensure that we could create a nonprofit to be able to start issuing decentralized digital identities to people who are a part of the have-nots, right? The
Wait,
people that don't have those.
sorry, what is a decentralized identity? Can you
Yeah, a
elaborate?
decentralized identity. If you think about a digital identity is typically something that's issued to you from a Facebook or an Apple or a Google. They
Sure.
issue an identity that is stored in a centralized database, right? So when I go to Facebook, I log in with Facebook. They have a centralized database of all of their customers, right? Everybody, all their identities are stored in these identity honeypots, if you will. A decentralized identity means that no data is ever stored on the web about me. It's stored only in my phone. And if somebody wants access to my information, let's say I go apply for a loan at Chase Bank, I can scan a code that says, here's my identity information. I immediately get a push notification on my phone that says, hey, Philip, Chase wants this information from you. Are you willing to give them that information? And it lists out all the information they give you. It's a self-sovereign type of approach. And you're like, yes, I'll give them my social security number because I'm applying for a loan, give them my name, my address, et cetera, and give them the access they need. But when it comes to something like, hey, this bar wants to know if you're over 21, it's a completely different request. If the bar is asking for my name, my phone number, my address, and my full birth date, I will say no, because that's too much information, right? That's data leakage. But the whole concept of decentralized identity is that there's an attestation stored on a blockchain somewhere that says, yes, this is Phillip Shoemaker's information. It's been stored, but it's stored only on his phone. It's not stored on the blockchain. We don't want any PII stored on a chain in case ultimately it can get hacked or these quantum computers can ultimately decrypt it. And so you want to store this only on your device. And so all of my interactions involve me with my biometrics and ultimately my device to prove I am who I say I am. And the data only is ever stored on my device.
But why would you want this only on your phone as opposed to having multiple ID cards, in your wallet, just as an example?
Yeah. So the part of the problem with having it on your phone is that you can have interaction. There's interesting technologies that can be used for a decentralized identity. First of all, you want it off of people's servers because these centralized databases are honey pots, right? Honey pots for the hackers. The hackers say, hey, if I break into this one database, I'll have 10 million pieces of information about people, right? 10 million identities. Whereas to get my identity, you have to steal my phone physically and then hack my phone, which is also, we know, is a difficult a problem. And so it's more of a one-to-one attack. That's why you want it on your own phone versus a centralized honeypot. But why do I want it on my phone versus carrying around a bunch of cards? Part of the reason is that you want to go through a KYC process only once. You don't want to do it over and over and over again, right? If you go to gambling websites or if you do stocks or crypto trading at all, you have to authenticate yourself at every exchange you go to, every gambling site you go to, all of these things, you always have to authenticate yourself. But that just means that more and more pictures of your ID are floating around out there that people have access to. And you want to do it once on your device. That's only a conversation between you and your computer, you and your device. And then ultimately, you can use that device to have just the information needed to log you into a service, to access a service, to send a wire, et cetera, just through your phone, and only the little amount of information necessary. And that's why you want it on your device.
Um, what if I'm a criminal and I want to make a fake ID and store it on my phone? Would you prevent that from happening, or how would you prevent that from happening?
Yeah, for the most part, the way these identity services work is they look at your ID. First of all, they scan you ultimately have to go through one KYC process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you scan that first ID, and this is where the criminal they'll create a fake ID and they'll scan it, And our technologies and the technologies we leverage from other companies as well will look for the watermarks. They will look to make sure it's a current document. They'll look at all the information, and then they'll ultimately read all the data that's on there. They'll compare your face to the face that's on the ID, and then they'll compare all the data to backend databases, right? Where we're all online somewhere. So Equifax, TransUnion, all of these folks are the database are these giant databases of credit that ultimately need to get access to determine if you are who you say you are, if the data on the ID matches any sort of the backend databases, et cetera. So it does a check there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But look, there's still a problem with synthetic IDs, and that's where AIs mash together things like somebody that's recently passed
Mm-hmm.
that hasn't been entered in any databases, and then they shove your name on top of the ID, et cetera. But we combat it with AI as well. A lot of these identity companies on Fido and others use AIs to be able to really look closely at your ID to make sure it's not fake, and then do a lot of analysis of the data that's on there to ensure that it matches with backend databases to ensure that it's not just a synthetic identity.
Okay, perfect. Well, appreciate your time, Philip, and we'll put the links down below so people can follow your work. And we'll speak again next time. Appreciate your time.
That's great. Thank you, David.
And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.